Hello everyone and welcome back to another Design Cut session, and I am thrilled to welcome back our good friend Gareth David for your third session with us. We were just saying, Gareth, before we went live.
Yep, back for another session. Good to be with you, Tom.
It's great to see you, and it is great to see the hundreds of people who are showing up right now. Gareth, what is this session going to be all about?
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to jump into InDesign, and I'm just going to share with you like a technique that I use to create carousels, because I've been doing a lot of them recently, and yeah, I've got this really cool system down that I'm really happy with. I'm going to try and chat with you and see if there's something you can benefit from.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure many of the design cutters watching right now have seen the power of carousels on social media, particularly Instagram. I use them myself with my personal brand, and you can use them on LinkedIn and other platforms as well. But so much of creating content for social media and making it sustainable is about efficient and effective workflows, right, Gareth?
Absolutely, absolutely. Cool. Well, I'm going to start off with a little intro. So let me know when you can see this, Tom.
Yep, loud and clear.
Okie doke. So let's jump into this then. So over the years, I've been doing a lot of work on social media, both for clients and for myself. And recently, I've been working a lot on Instagram. Now, one of the top features, as we just spoke about, is the ability to use carousels. Now, back in 2015, Instagram introduced this really cool feature that allowed us to post up to 10 single posts, 10 frames, which can be presented seamlessly. And this is a really great feature because it allows us to present much more information in a more dynamic way. And we can use it for all sorts of things like education, stories, how-tos, recipes, galleries and portfolios and things like that. And since they've introduced this feature, you've seen loads of people really celebrating this and just bringing us some really awesome content. And today, I see these carousel posts like digital concertina leaflets. And I used to do a lot of these back in the day, with print. And these are a really great way of communicating and sharing knowledge in a creative way, in a really dynamic way. So when I think of Instagram carousels, I always think of them like these printable concertina folds. So on this stream, I'm going to share with you a technique I use to create social media carousels, which allows me to create them swiftly and effectively. Now, in Instagram, you've currently got three main canvas sizes to work with. You can work with the square, which is quite popular. You can work with the portrait, or you can work with the landscape. Now, it's up to you which canvas size you go with, but there's no right or wrong way. It's whatever works for you. Now, I personally go with the portrait because I think it gives me a little bit more space to work with, because my posts tend to communicate quite a bit of information, so it's good to do that. So how do I create them? Well, today there's a lot of popular programs you can use to make carousel posts in. And over the years I've used a lot of them, but in my experience I found that InDesign is the best way to do them. And why is that? Because InDesign is the best program for laying out your content. Because unlike all the other apps I just listed, InDesign was created specifically for desktop publishing. So InDesign comes with all the powerful programs and tools and features to make that job really easy. And it's also it has all the powerful type tools, really, really powerful type tools, which, superior to other programs, really. And using InDesign, it's really easy to duplicate and edit. Now, this is one of the main reasons why I would recommend you use InDesign, because as you'll see later, InDesign is amazing for creating templates, which makes your overall workflow that much easier. And InDesign is mega quick at exporting as well. Now, once you've created your documents, exporting is a breeze, and it can be done in a few seconds. And this is a really big time saver as over the other ones. So InDesign is all about layout, and it's heavily focused on publishing your communication in a variety of ways. Now, traditionally, InDesign was used for print media, books, magazines, stationery, all that sort of publishing content is really done professionally in InDesign. But it can be used really well for digital uses as well, with all of its functionality with interactivity and hyperlinks and so on. But in this session, we are going to be looking at how we can use InDesign in a digital publication. So So let's look at a couple of examples. So I'll just jump into InDesign, and before we dive into it, I'm just going to show you a few little examples of what I normally use InDesign for and a couple of posts that I've done recently. So here you are in InDesign, and we can see that these are a few carousel posts that I've done in the past. And I can press W on the keyboard, and I can jump between preview mode and design mode. And this just shows us all of the bits and bobs going in this. This is something I've used, and you can see a bit of the dynamics that I use across 10 carousels. So you don't have to do 10. You can do as many as you like, but recently I've been taking advantage of the extent that you could have with carousel posts. This is another example of the dynamic that I sometimes use. I like to use images across double spreads and things like that, just to create a bit more of an interesting user journey, a dynamic for that. Here's another example of one I did recently, where I was just answering a question from someone. And these are kind of a series of posts that I do. So I have a nice document here with a few in there. And then there's another version where we can just really take advantage of it across the full, things like that. And here's another example of a different approach. This time I've got a 2, 4, 6, 8 carousel post. So, depending on your design, you don't have to go for the full 10. And finally, here is an example of an education post about human biology. And this is what we're going to look into. So what we're going to look at having a go at on this stream.
Love it. And Gareth, I love what I'm seeing here, where you have images going across multiple slides. That's a really good tactic for kind of holding people's attention, because we're seeing the whole thing stretched out here. But obviously, when you're seeing them one at a time, there's something really satisfying about swiping as the user and just seeing that image extend and it kind of bleed into that next slide.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're creating a user experience, and you want to create something dynamic and something engaging. And to your point there, Tom, it's nice to have things across the fold as well to keep people.
You can get really creative as well. I saw you had that torch where the light was kind of going across 3, I think.
Yeah,
and it makes it a really fun experience for the user. It's so creative.
Absolutely. Okay, so that said, let's have a go at making them. So we're going to have a go at making this one at the top. But before that, I just want to jump into one other thing and quickly talk about a little bit about InDesign. InDesign is really a compositing program. If you're familiar with using Photoshop and Illustrator, generally those apps are what you create all your assets in. You create your photos, do all your editing, and then and obviously compose all your text, and you bring them all into InDesign. And InDesign is where you manage everything, and you just really bring it together. So with that said, with that makes you want to really focus on organization. So before I start a project, it's always good to have a project folder. So get yourself a project folder and try and get all your assets together. So whatever images you're going to use, it's always nice to have them in a single place, because during your project, you're going to be grabbing these images, and it's always nice to know where they are, so you can just have a nice streamlined workflow. So what I normally do is I have an assets folder and a publish folder. This is where I'm going to put my assets in once I've created them. And I have an assets folder here where I've got my copy. So this is my copy, which I'm going to put in, and my images. So everything is in a neat place. And once I've got that, I can jump into InDesign and we can start making one. So to do this, I'm just going to start by creating a new document. Now, again, back to the dimensions, whichever dimensions you want to use, you can add it in here. I'm going to go for the portrait. So I'm going to, first of all, on the right, I'm going to make sure this is set to pixels, because we're working in digital, and digital is associated with pixels. And I'm going to go for 1080 by 1350, and that's the portrait canvas size for that. I'm not going to worry too much about what's going on here, for a reason which I'll show you, for extra things that we can edit our document when we're in there. I'm going to make sure that facing pages is turned off. That's really important. I want to make sure that facing pages is off. Got my canvas size ready to go. I'm just going to click create. And here we are. We got our canvas. Okie dokie. Now, you might ask, well, why didn't I create 10 pages if I wanted to create 10 pages if I'm going to make a carousel? Well, I'll discuss that in a minute, but there's a good reason for that. So once I've got my canvas open, I'm going to do a quick little cheeky technique. Over in my pages panel, I'm just going to quickly come into my master page. And in my master page, I'm just going to quickly draw a quick little frame just to fill the canvas size, because what I want to do, I just want to drop down some guides, really easy guides, 2 easy guides like that. Boom. So I've got my middle and my horizontal, and when I click back into my main document, these guides are here, and I can't touch them, I can't maneuver them, and they're going to come in handy later. So okay, so I've got my guides. Let's do the pages. Now, if I want to add a new page, we can come to the bottom of the panel here and just create a new page. But what happens is when you create a new page, by default, it's set underneath. Now, we don't want that. We want to create a seamless carousel. So we need to get that page up and next to the other one. So what I'll do is I'll come over to my pages panel. And if we click on the menu here, there's this little option here, allow document pages to shuffle. And this is currently ticked. I'm going to tick that off. What that allows me to do is to come into my pages panel, click on this little page here, and just seamless cam at that. Now, if you wanted to create a carousel post with 2, then you could just go ahead and do this. But we're going to create a canvas size of 10. So in my pages panel, I'm just going to right click and duplicate that spread. Unlike before, let's put them underneath. I'm just going to click and drag it and put it to the side like that. Easy peasy. And I'm going to do one more page, duplicate one more page. That makes 5. And then I duplicate that spread. That makes 10. And just like that, we've got ourselves a 10-page canvas ready to roll. Easy.
You make it look so easy, mate.
Well, it's just knowing how, isn't it? Once you know what to do, you can bosh it out. Okay. All right. So once we've got the pages sorted, let's jump into the layers. So we want to organize this. So we're jumping into the layers now because we're going to have type and we're going to have images on this. So I'm just going to quickly call this my base images, and then I'm going to create a new layer and call this my type. So I'm going to put my type on the top and type on the bottom. Now, one thing to mention, when we've set up the canvas, we're ready to bring in our content. But the way Instagram currently works is that when you put an image up, it's always put as a square. So I'm just going to quickly jump into this little demo. And this is a little tool and a mechanism that I use. When I'm creating my posts, I have a little simulation of my Instagram wall here. And this is just for me to preview my content to see how it's going to look. And if you look here, you could see it's all square. Now, I'm currently working to the portrait. Now, if I just grab an image here, for example, and come and open this in Photoshop, we can see that this is a portrait, and we have a little bit on the top and a little bit on the bottom. Now, we've got to be careful to accommodate for that zone. And if we go into some of my other versions here, like so, and I'll just jump to my logo ones, I have a layer here called crop. And if you look over here, this is a crop layer, which I create. So when I'm designing my carousel, I know that I need to stay within this square, and anything above or below is not going to be seen on the wall. Just a small detail, but it's something that I try to keep in mind when I'm designing my carousels with portrait. So I'm going to quickly create this just so I can quickly create this, have it for later. So I'm just going to quickly draw a square on my canvas like this, and I'm going to hold Shift so I can do this and just bring it out as a nice, neat square. And I'm just going to put that in black. Now I've got my guides that I set earlier. I can just nicely put my square in the middle like that. So this is the square that is cropped when you put your image and you upload it to Instagram. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw another box here like so. I'll fill that in black, put that in the bottom.
Gareth, this is very similar to print work, I guess, where you're looking at margins and bleeds and that kind of thing. What could potentially be cut off by the printer.
Absolutely.
And so you're having all the vital information in that kind of central area where you know it's going to be visible. Yeah.
We're aware of the criteria we have to work to, and we're just accommodating for that in this instance. So I'm going to cut that. So I'm going to cut those layers, those elements, come back to my layers, create a new layer, and I'm going to call this crop. I'm just going to paste those in, and I'm going to lock it. So I can toggle this on and off during the course of my design production, and I can just keep that as a way to be aware. Okie dokie. So now we've set up the document, we're ready to bring in some content. Now, quickly before I do that, I'm just going to come to my pages panel, make sure all my pages are selected. I'm going to come up to layout and hit margins and columns. and I'm going to set my top and bottom to 80 pixels. And that is just something that I'm going to use for consistency throughout every page. And that is one of the cool things about InDesign. You can't do that in Photoshop. You can't do that in Illustrator. You can't set margins like that. This is really good in InDesign. You can also do columns, and you can add your columns if you wanted. But this is going to be quite a simple layout, so we're not going to worry too much about columns. We're just going to keep it nice and simple for now. So once we've done that, we're ready to bring it in. So let's start with some copy. So I'm going to come to my project folder, into my assets, into my copy, and I've got my predefined copy here. And this is what I'm going to use to start with. So let's bring that in. So I'm going to start with student science, which is the logo type, which is just going to be a little logo that sits on the top. So I can do it by just grabbing my type tool. That's that. I'm just going to make sure I'm on the right layer. There we go. So on my layer, I'm just going to drag a box. Easy peasy, drag a box and paste that in. And that's really small. So I'm going to get that up to speed. So I'm going to select that copy, and I'm going to set it to about 55. And I can do that really easily up in the control panel up here. Control panel, as you can see, there's loads of cool little tools up here which we can use. And we'll be referencing that a lot to do all sorts of settings and things like that. So up here, I'm going to set my type to 55 points, and I'm going to change the typeface. So up here, I'm going to come in here and type in Beautiful Minds. I'm going to use Beautiful Minds serif. It's a nice font, this.
Amazing.
So I'm just going to tweak the tracking a little bit. So with the type selected, just going to hold Alt and just press left. I'm just going to push in the tracking just a little bit. And one thing to keep in mind is, as you start to use InDesign, you start to use frames, they can really get in the way sometimes. So try and keep on top of your frames. So I'm just going to tuck this under there like so, just to keep it neat, nice and neat. Because, you know, if our frames are all over the place and we start getting loads of layers, it's going to be a bit, you know, cumbersome to work. So I'm just going to pop it in there like that. So now it's time to bring in some color. So I've got a reference here of some colors that I'm going to use. I'm going to come into my assets folder. I'm just going to bring in a little color resource that I've had in the past, which I've done previously, because we're going to use these two colors in this project. So how do we get these colors in? Well, it's really easy. Like in most programs, you can press I to access the eyedropper tool. I'm just going to click that red color in there, and we'll see that it appears in our color picker. Really easy way to get these colors into your color swatches. This is right click and add that to swatches. So now we've got our red, and I'm going to click back into the box, select the copy, and boom, smack that into red like so, easy peasy. And while I'm at it, I want to get the blue in there as well. So I'll press I, select the blue, and just right click, add that to swatch, because I'm going to need that later on. Okie doke. So that's our first bit of copy. Now, if I come back to the layers panel and click on the crop, you can see, if I press W, you can see that we can't see that. That is a little element that I don't want to be seen on the main Instagram wall. I want that to be above and out of the fold. So that is just cheekily up there, and that is by design, because what I want is to just focus on what I'm about to put in here. So I'll just toggle that off. And we're going to bring in another type layer. Now, with that box selected, I can press Alt and just quickly drag down, and you can easily duplicate that frame. Really easy. Just click and drag and click Alt. Now, I want to do something slightly different in this text frame. So I'm just going to click into my type, up into the control panel, and center that to the middle. And I'm just going to deselect the frame by clicking on my selection tool and come up and just click on the Align Center, because I want this type to be aligned in the center. I'm just going to click on here, and I'm going to change the typeface. So for this time, I'm going to use a different typeface. So it's going to be Unlucky. It's a font called Unlucky, which is a really interesting. It's a really interesting sort of Gothic, sort of black letter typeface. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to come back into my copy document. I want to change that to the word human. So I click that, and I need to change the typeface size. So I'll hit that to 460. And right now the tracking is a bit much on this, because it's still got the tracking from the previous text. So I'm going to come up to the control panel and just put this to 0. And hopefully that should be a lot more clear and legible. Okay, cool. So we've got our frame, we've got our hero text or display font there, and I want to get the next one in. Press Alt, click and drag that down, easy peasy, into my copy document. This time I'm going to hit this and hit biology. And I want, yep.
It's beautiful font, isn't it, actually?
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites. I forgot about some of those real, even though it's black letter, it's got some lovely curves to it.
Yeah, it's really cool. And it's good for, I chose it this one because it feels really organic. And it feels really nice. So all I want to do is I want to change the typeface to a different one. So this time I'm going to go for, I'm going to pair this up. So I'm going to go for something nice like a sans serif. So I'm going to go for, and a really nice sans serif one is Kiona Bold. And this is a really nice one, but right now that type is a bit too big. So I'm going to put that down to 100 points. I'm just going to bring it back and place it underneath my text like so. And if I drag my frame down, that'll just manage my frames a little more. And that's looking something quite nice. I'll just pop that in the middle moment. I just want to alter the tracking a little bit on this one. So I'll punch this tracking up to about 160 and just give it a bit more air. Just feels a little bit more stylized, feels a little bit nicer in that lockup there. Okay, moving on. And again, I'm pressing W throughout this, and just to jump from preview mode to the design mode. And next, I want to bring in a footer. So I want to bring some text down here, really easy. With my box selected, hold Alt, drag it down. Now, currently, the text is aligned to the top of this frame. I want to align it to the bottom of the frame. So up in the control panel, I can click Align Bottom, and that will set the text to the baseline, which is the bottom of that frame. Really easy. And I'm going to bring in a bit more text. So this one's going to be anatomy lessons. Hit that in there. And I want to change the typeface of this one to a different font. So this one's going to be, let's have a look. Let's go for this one. It's going to be, it's hard to pronounce this one, but it's Montreux.
Oh, Montreux.
Montreux. That's it.
Yeah.
Montreux. Thanks for that. And we're going to go for, I think it's the bold italic. And we're going to just bring, in a sec, just going to bring that down a little bit. We're going to bring that one down to 35 pixels. There you go. And I'm going to come up and make sure that the tracking is set to normal, and I'm going to set this to blue. Just to get a bit of contrast in there, it's that one is set to blue. And I'm going to just bring this over, just quickly duplicate this. And this one's going to be lesson number 1. It's going to be lesson number 1. I'll put that in red, and I'll set that to the right. So now we've got this really clean little lockup, which you see, which is quite common in some Instagram sort of headers. Just a little bit of a main focus, and sometimes you've got your little side elements around the side like that. Okay, so that's our type. Now I'm going to bring in some images. So I'm going to bring in my, add an image. There you go. So I'm going to come back to my project folder and into my images. For this one, this is all going to be about the human brain. So I'm going to bring this in like so. And I'll just pop this below like so. Made a mistake there. If I just cut that, I'm going to make sure to put it on my base image layer. So I'm just going to put it there like so. There you go. Now, the thing is, with this image, it's currently black, and I want this to be blue. So I'm just going to quickly come to my links panel, and I can right-click, and if I edit with Photoshop, let me just open it up in Photoshop. And what I'm going to do quickly is just come and select my blue color, and that'll load it into my palette there. Now, if we look, this is a PNG. So this is a nice image that has already been cut out, and we've got our transparency in the background. So if I come to my layers panel, just quickly double click on this and do a color overlay and select my blue, I can easily just change that to a blue. And I'm going to press Command Shift S. I'm just going to save this as a new asset and just call this Brain Blue, not to overwrite my previous one. And back into InDesign, I can press A, and pressing A, you can select into a frame to select the image. And I'm going to press Command D and that will then bring up my assets again, and I'm just going to drop in my blue frame. So I've got my new asset in there. Now, I want to create a bit of dynamic between the header words and the image. So just like you can in Photoshop, where you've got your blend modes, if you come to your effects panel, and you can find that in Windows Effects, you can bring up your effects panel, which we can have the option to apply some modes. So I'm going to select my top layer and my bottom layer, biology and human, come over and click multiply. And what that will do is that will just multiply those words onto the image. So now we've got a nice little effect happening there on that image. Now, another thing to keep in mind, which I suppose is a good time to mention this, is that when you're working in InDesign and you're working with digital images, times when you bring them in, they can look a bit dull because they look like they are in CMYK. So what you might want to do is come up to Edit, Transparency Blend Space, and you want to click Document RGB. And you see a little difference there, because it was when we created the document, we didn't tell it it was RGB, but we're going to export it as RGB, but you've got to prepare it like that, just to make sure that you see it as it's going to be seen when you export your images. So there you go. So we've got our first frame, and those are the elements, and we can proceed. So where are we next? Let's do frame 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the image across, like so. And if I press W, I can use this to get my guides, like so. Easy. And when in InDesign, once we've got our elements, we can just quickly duplicate them, like I was saying before. It's really easy to just duplicate your elements. So I'm going to use this typeface that I used before, and I'm going to come into my document, and this is going to be all about the brain. So there you go. Now, I don't want the tracking to be quite as wide on this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, and I'm just going to bring this down a little bit. And what I'm going to do now is create a character style. And you might be familiar with character styles, but this is another powerful feature in InDesign, which is also available, I think, in Illustrator and that. But for consistency, you can build yourself a library of character styles, which would allow you to be sort of consistent throughout your application of your visual elements. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to come up to my character styles panel, and I have this really neatly on the side here. But if you can't see it, you can come up to Windows, type panels, and get your styles. Get your character styles there. So I'm going to create a new character style. I'm just going to call this header. Click OK, and make sure that that is applied, because I'll be duplicating this again in future. So it's good to have that character styles. Quick question, Tom, while we're on this. How do you do your social media? Because I know you're very proactive with your social media, aren't you?
I am, and it's funny you should ask. So my incredible designer, Teresa, so she's the one that designs it. So maybe, Teresa, if you could let everyone know in the comments, because I'm not sure. I think she's evolved her workflow a little bit. Yeah. So yeah, let us know, Teresa.
Cool. So right now we're just in the process of laying this out, and a lot of you might be familiar with what I'm doing. This might not be new to you. We're making frames, we're putting in type. But shortly, when I create this, and we'll see a bit more of the functionality of how InDesign can really come into its own. So we'll just carry on quickly developing these frames, and I'll just do the quick layout for you.
Amazing. Gareth, I have to say, just quickly, I love how you're combining fonts here, because it's not an easy thing to do. You know, you've got 4 different disparate font families, and you've managed to combine them in such an elegant way that really fits together. And I love how you've called out that human, but it perfectly seems to pair with Kiona, which you used for biology. Have you got any thoughts on font pairing? I know it's a bit off topic, but we get asked about this all the time. Or do you just do it by eye and experience?
Well, one of the key things is contrast. And that's one of the design principles that you really need to keep in mind. Everything is contrast. Contrast in color, contrast in imagery, contrast in type. So what you'll see is a lot of people like to mix sans serifs with serifs, because there's a very clear contrast between them. And another thing to keep in mind, a lot of people will say, is that you shouldn't have too many fonts. Now you might be saying, well, hang on, I've got all these fonts going on here. Well, this one here, this student science, this is like a logo type. So I'm treating this as like a logo for this particular company or profile that's doing it. And display, this is a display font, and this is the combination of a display font. So sometimes display fonts can be on their own, and that's why they're called display fonts, because they can sort of stand at the top and be their own sort of, they can have their own characters. But generally, when you're consistent through a publication and you're using a lot of type, it's nice to have a balance between maybe one or two. Like, it's nice to have a header type, which is either a serif or sans serif, and then your body copy, which can be again serif or the opposite, really. And again, celebrate font families. So you want to look for a font family that has italics, bold, light, and things like that, because then that adds more dynamic to your compositions, where you can use in your hierarchy. So you can use that. So that's one thing that I keep in mind. Contrast. I always think if there's a nice contrast, then it'll work more like it. But also keep in mind the theme as well, the context. You don't. We're using a human font here we're using this lovely font here because it feels really organic, and also this is about education. So we want it to feel clear. So we've got a nice synergy between organic and clarity.
The way I think about font pairing is kind of like ingredients when you're cooking. Even if the ingredients are nice, if they're all really similar, it can get a little bit bland and samey. Cooking comes alive when you use contrast, right? So you've got sweet, savory, and sour, all these different flavors. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I'll crack on then. So now I'm going to bring in some body copy. So I'm just going to duplicate this as we did before. Now, this currently has the character style header applied. I'm just going to click none, because I'm going to add some new copy into this, and I'm going to create a new character style. So into my copy document, I'm going to copy this and pop it in. And to this, I'm going to change the font to, what was it again? Montreal?
Montreux.
Montreux. I can't pronounce it. Is it French, Tom? Is that a French word?
Well, Roch, who designed it, is not French, but yeah, it sounds quite French.
It looks French. It sounds French. Yeah. So I put in the regular this time, and I'm going to pop this up to 50 points. And now I'm just going to toggle my frame just to make sure that fits in there nicely. And that's looking tidy. So once we've got that in there, sometimes what you'll see when people use Instagram is they have a lot of sort of copy on the bottom, like consistently throughout their frames. So you repeat it at the bottom. Don't have to do that, but if it works for you, you can. So I'm just going to drop a little footer note in the corner here, and this is going to just be a little call out to just to let you know which Instagram channel you're looking at. In this case, it's Student Science. So I'm going to put that in there, and I'm just going to, that's going to stay at 35, and I'm going to set that to a red. And what I normally do is, as you can see, this is a very, very simple layout, and I'm not really using paragraphs, I'm using blocks of text. And if I've done magazines and books in the past, and it can get very complicated, so I'll do paragraph styles. So I guess this is just a very easy, simple way that I do this. It's just an easy workflow. If I was going to do books with loads of more complicated layouts, I would 100% use paragraph styles. But in this case, I'm just using a paragraph style because each block is generally, treated as such on its own, and I just find it as an easy way to do that for me. That's my thinking behind that. So there you go. So let's move on to the next page. And again, now we've got these elements. It's just so easy to duplicate them, like bang. Once you spend a little bit of time just formatting things, creating your character styles, and doing that, you can just duplicate them. Oh, actually, I forgot. I was going to create a character style for this before I answered that question. So I'm going to set a new character style quickly for this copy here. So with it selected, up into the character styles, I'm just going to use the character style. Let's call this blue body for now. And click OK. Click that and select my blue body. Just make sure that's set in. And there you go, easy peasy. And once I've got that in there, I'm just going to bring in this element, repeat it down. So I'm just going to create like a little dynamic where the eye can go up and the eye can go down. Really simple. And I'm going to change the image in here. So I'm going to click into that image, Command D. This time drop in a different image. And as you see, this is a black image and it's not blue. So I'm going to use the same technique I used earlier on really quickly. I'm going to come into the links panel. And this is a really, really important panel. I should probably have spoken a little bit more about this earlier on, but the links panel is like the main panel, one of the main panels in InDesign, because this is where you manage all your links and you make sure everything's okay in there. If anything is broken, if you move a file somewhere else on your computer when you're doing a document, you will get a warning symbol in here. So it's really good to keep an eye on your links to make sure that everything is all synchronized and everything is linked. Because the last thing you want to do is export a file with your image somewhere else on the computer and it's not there. So keep an eye on your links panel.
Great tip.
And from your links panel, this is where you can control everything. So in my links panel, I can right click and you have a number of options you can do here. You can find out where it is if you forget where it is somewhere on the computer. But what I'm going to do on this occasion is just open with Photoshop. And I'm going to quickly double click on this, set the color overlay to blue, and just quickly make a new asset and just call that blue and click OK. Back in InDesign, I'll just press Command D and pop in my new asset. So really, really easy. And it's really good to just get a hang of your assets and coming in and out of the programs. Like we were saying before, InDesign is all about compositing. It's all about managing those images and all your assets. So we've got that in there like that. Easy. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next frame. We're going to do something a little bit different here. Up until this point, it's all been nice and clean. It's all been, clean type, nice and white with the blue graphics. We're going to mix it up a little bit. And this time we're going to put in a red background. So I'm just going to drop in a frame. I'm just going to grab a text frame from the corner there. Just drop it over. And I'll pop that in red. Easy peasy. And this time I'm going to put in another image. So I want an image to go across the fold. And an interesting one here is we can just drop the brain. We can drop the brain here, the left side and the right side on like so. And what we can do is I don't want it to be blue like that. I want it to have a bit more of a dynamic with that red background. So I'll pull up my effects panel and just drop in my multiply. And like that, we've got a bit more of a darker image. Easy peasy. Now I want to get some text in here. So what I can do is, one sec, like that, there you go. So I can just duplicate another text box over like so. I'll bring that down. But what you can see is the text is still got that multiply applied. So be careful when you're doing this. I'll do that. I'll just change that to a white. I'll just grab my next type here. And I'll drop that in. And I'm going to select that and do that to the left. Oh, look, I forgot to edit the text here.
I was just about to mention.
Got to edit that. Let's pop it in. See how easy it is? Once you've got it, just drop it in. Just drop it in. Whoop, what is it? Heavyweight. There you go. Easy to do. And that's how easy it is. When you set up these things, it's just, it's just so easy to just drop them in and do that. So here we go. Back to this. So I'm just going to bring this type in and put it in like that. And just make sure that it's looking okay for now. What I might do is I might just quickly tweak my tracking a little bit. Make sure that's fine. And with that, I'll select the copy. Let's come up to my styles. Where are we? Yeah, do a new style. Let's call this header white. Boom, and that's it. Now, normally I'd spend a bit more time finessing the type, finessing it all, making sure that it's all perfect. But I don't want to, you don't want to watch all that. So you don't want to watch me spend ages doing that. So I'm just going to move it across and leave it like that for now. I'll drop that. And I can bring in my next.
I love how you're using left and right alignment for the left and right brain.
Absolutely. It's just a happy coincidence. It's what you have. It's a happy coincidence. And they're not, they don't happen often, but sometimes they do. And it just You don't have to think too much. It's like, oh, look, left and right brain, easy peasy. Didn't have to think too much about this one there, Tom, do I? So, you know, happy coincidences. So
I have to say, I love your design style, mate. I mean, it makes me want to consume the content. And carousels are great for that when you're going through them. But I love how clean this is, the use of negative space. It just makes me want to soak up all the knowledge.
Well, that's cool. You know, that's what we always try and do, isn't it? And these images are great, by the way. And these are awesome little biology images which I got from Design Coach Library. They work really well here. So nice. They work well together, I think.
They do, yeah.
Okay. So we're getting there. We're getting there. So what I'm going to do is I could bring in another layout. Okay, how are we doing for time? I tell you what, I could spend more time laying it out, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move on to the functionality because I don't want to waste too much time. I think we've covered a lot.
If we're doing Q&A, we've probably got 10 minutes left of demo. If that
what
works.
I'll do, there's one more thing I want to show. So ultimately, what I would do is I would use the same techniques just to fill out the rest of the frames, and I would end up with something that looks like this, really. And I would build up the frames. I'd keep doing it, putting the frame boxes in and putting the strokes in, and I would always end up with a call to action at the end. So really, with the carousels, you start with it's like a cover and a back. So you open with with a nice image, and you end with a call to action, which you'll see like this. Now, once you've designed and you've created your Instagram carousel like this, it's time to export it. And this is another powerful feature in InDesign. So, one thing I forgot to mention as well is that the great thing about working in InDesign is that when you create a template like so, or create a post, you're essentially creating a template. And what you can do is you can come into the pages panel, and what you could do is with your pages selected, you can duplicate the spread, right? So what I've done is I've just duplicated the spread, and then you've got yourself a beautiful template. And then I can just come into I can come into another copy document. This time it's about the heart, and I can just grab my copy, and it's really easy to just drop in some new copy like that, and you've got yourself a template. And with your images in place, you can just come in and you can drop in another image, and with that image there, I can just with the image selected, Command Alt Shift E, and that'll just really nicely fit that image to the box. So and it's so efficient, and that is one of the cool things about InDesign is efficiency, right? That's why. So I could go through that easy peasy, drop in all the new images. I've got all my character styles, and if there was something if I thought that the header was too big, I could just come into my header style, double click on that. Basic formats. I could change the style in here, and it'll just change it there. Okay, so it's really good. But lastly, once you've designed your template and you want to export it, it's really easy to export it in InDesign. So once you're happy, you press Command E, and I'm going to come into my project folder, into my publish. And on this occasion, I want to publish, let's say, post number 3. And if we look carefully in the InDesign pages panel, you can see the numbers underneath the pages. So post 3 is page 19 to 27. So I'm going to come into my export, into publish, and create a new folder, call this post 3, and what I'll do is I'm going to save as, and I'm going to call this P3 underscore, and I'm not going to leave a number because I'm going to allow that to fill the number when I export. Down into format, I'm going to make sure it's set to JPEG. Make sure that's really important. It's got to be JPEG. We're not doing PDFs here. We're doing JPEGs. And this is really key why we set up the 10 pages, because when we export, it's going to chop that up for us and do 10. So here we go. So I'm going to click Save. And in the Export JPEG, I'm going to look at range. And the range of our post 3 is number 19 to 27. And I'm going to click Export. And then in a second, that'll do that. And it's done. So if I go to my project folder, back into my publish, into post 3, there they are. And that is it. Just like that, we exported our frames, and these are now ready to upload to your Instagram app. and load them into a carousel, just like that. Really easy. And
Incredible.
Exactly, just like that. And if you wanted to make a change, if you wanted to make a quick change and then just export them again, it's really easy. Back into your export, it'll ask you to replace, and you can just replace them all. And it's just like you make sure to click apply, and it'll just export them all again. And that's really easy. And that's how you can really easily export your Instagram carousel posts from InDesign.
Amazing. So smart. Just a quick bonus tip. People often ask me, how do they do carousels for LinkedIn? And actually, you just save it as a PDF. So it's slightly different. You don't upload 10 images like Instagram. You just save it as one PDF, and it displays it in carousel form.
Awesome.
Incredible. Well, Gareth, would you like to come back to the room and stop screen sharing? Gareth, thanks so much. I think we're chatting next week, so I can't wait to catch up then. But yeah, really appreciate you being part of this event. That was awesome.
Happy to be part of it. And best of luck for the rest of the streams today, Tom.
Thank you. Appreciate it, man. Thanks. I'll see you in the chat. All right.
Bye.